to be making a brief presentation in the fine arts.
Sorry, it stopped off for a second. I'm sorry. Let me introduce you here. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining Northwestern Oklahoma State University Video Guest Artist Lecture Series. Today we're joined by Annette Goldmacher from New York. Ms. Goldmacher, thank you for joining us. Ms. Goldmacher has her background in classical and German studies in Colgate from 2010, and she's also has her master's in museum studies from Syracuse University from 2013. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Today we're going to have you give a little pointer about professionalism and how to display artworks, and have you talk to my students directly about how to curate their own show. So, without further ado, I'll take over.
With pleasure. Do you see the presentation, Yoshi?
Not yet. Did you push the screen share? Or
I did.
Here we go.
All right. Let's try that again. How are we?
Good.
All right. So, as we said, Colgate University class of 2010, Syracuse University class of 2013, and a couple of the places where I've worked in the field. As a graduate student at Syracuse University's graduate program in museum studies and former teaching assistant in a targeted art history course, I hope that my experience will be helpful to you as you approach designing your own shows. The course that I taught was designed to help studio art students learn the roots of contemporary art and how to engage in the current artistic climate. One of the most important factors in breaking into the art world today is presentation. Nobody will give you a chance if you don't present yourself well. You need to have a clean, understandable show with well-written text. Overall, you need to look presentable. There's a danger as a young artist of wanting to be too different. I am in no way advising you to compromise your artistic vision or your character, but rather to take into account public perception. If you want people to consider your art for a show or to buy, you need to care about how they see both you and it. You're stepping into a very harsh spotlight and you need to be prepared. Your audience will not always be made up of other artists, but either way, the key is to be accessible. You have been involved in every step of creating your works. This means that it has a background and meaning for you that do not necessarily translate to an outside audience. Remember that you will not always be there to explain, so you need to present your work in such a way that explanation is not needed. You should not have to talk. Present art in a way that allows it to speak for itself. Arrangement matters more than you might think. How you present your art has just as much impact on the viewer as the art itself. If they cannot follow the manner in which you have chosen to display your work, they will either give up or mentally check you off as being too artsy, fake, or even sloppy. This is not to say that you have to stick to the standard 60-inch center with everything in nice, neat horizontal rows. If that's what you want, then do it and allow the geometry to become a part of your installation process. But if it isn't, then remember that organized chaos can be very creative and stimulating to the eye. For example, this particular image comes from the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Great.
In the end, the shapes that you create around your work matter a lot. Either isolate a piece, give it a strong connection to another work, or if poorly laid out, they make the piece seem lost. This is why you need to plan every step out. Know what size any frames will be, know how many works you'll be arranging, know the color palette of your exhibition space. Knowledge is most definitely power when you are arranging a show, cliche as that may sound. Draw it out, make a Google SketchUp, whatever works for you, to make sure that you can arrange your show the way you want it to be. Do whatever works for you. Know all of your dimensions. Measure everything. Check everything. Be thorough. Remember what is going to be around you. What other art will be near yours? Is there a doorway that interrupts or borders your space? For example, if you look here, there's an installation that involves yellow, blue, and red lights, and it is next to a doorway, but that does not interfere with your ability to interact with the piece. What colored light will be cast on your work also has a great deal of influence. That particular piece, the light is part of the work. But overall, the room may have yellow light, blue light. Make sure that that doesn't impact the pieces in a negative way as they interact with each other. Remember what would be, if you want to be taken seriously, you have to present yourself intelligently. It seems unfair, but you're not far enough along to have a stage persona. If you want people to see your art and have a positive opinion of it, you cannot be silent like Warhol, abrasive like Picasso, or overtly unordinary like Ernst. Use proper grammar, do not overwrite, and avoid flowery language. You are writing an artist's statement, and you need to present who you are and what you do without confusing people. If you want to write a poem for a statement, do it. Just avoid poetry that has no format. Write a sonnet, write a ballad, write something with form and structure. This isn't going to present you as being messy. Be careful in every aspect of your work. Don't be slapdash or hasty. Edit, measure, ask for help. Always have somebody else look at anything you bring. While I applaud creative installation, it is not worth sacrificing safety of people, of artworks, of the environment around you, and will usually be forbidden by legitimate exhibition spaces when you do something that is considered unsafe. Now, that is an overall guide, and I would love to hear what you have to say about your own pieces and what you are doing so that I can perhaps target my further discussion a little bit more specifically.
Okay, so this is the more
Yeah.
So what you guys present to Annette about how you project, how you're, what you think you'll be showing, how you think you'll be showing with that, how you'll be showing.
All right, and again, I do apologize for the background noise. I might ask you to repeat yourselves. And at the end, I will allow any of you to email me with individual questions as I'm trying to give a broad overview because I'm sure that each of you has very individualistic art pieces and no one particular formula will suit all of you.
Right, so this is a thesis show for these graduating seniors right behind me. And they are trying to curate something together. They're at the moment in the process of hunting down an actual space for them to actually curate the space. And once that's settled, then that's when they'll, I guess, make the decision to what to hang. But it could be a culmination of what they've done this semester or what they've done throughout their time here. But I'm going to leave it open for them, so I'm about to have them talk to you. So this is your show. She's the pro. Ask her for help. Is what I'm saying here. Okay.
Well, first off, for this that we're looking at.
Oh, I am losing you. Perhaps come a little closer to the microphone. Again, I do apologize for the technical issues. All right, start over.
Spaces that we're looking at, one of them is a pretty typical gallery space, and the other one wasn't made to be a gallery. But I guess the convenience of having like already figured out a place to hang things, and they already have the equipment that we would need. How much weight would you put that? I guess how much weight does that have when you're choosing a gallery space?
Well, it depends. The first thing is, do you have enough physical space for all of the pieces in both the spaces? That's your first concern. Can you physically fit everything? And more importantly, can you fit everything without it being cluttered? Because if you have multiple artists, you need enough space for the pieces to interact well. Now, let's say, for example, that both of these spaces can accommodate the physical amount of art without it becoming a problem. Sometimes it can be a very beneficial thing to have it in a non-traditional gallery space. It allows you a little bit more freedom, because in traditional gallery space, people expect the traditional, the 60-inch center, the horizontal, everything like that. One challenge of a non-conventional space, however, is that you may or may not know what the walls are made out of. And The people who run it may or may not know how to help you paint. Now, if you have people who are going to help you physically install your art, the actual literal hammering into a wall and things like that, this is less of a concern. But one of the big issues is what sort of space is this non-gallery space in? Because that is going to change people's opinion of your art. If you do something in a solid art gallery space, you're automatically giving it a sense of prestige. However, doing something in a non-traditional area allows it to be a little bit more avant-garde, and as insight and others, it gives you that little bit of edge, to use an unfortunately cliche term. We're going to give a little bit of edge if you do it in a non-traditional space. So the problem isn't necessarily weighing them against each other, it's figuring out what the three of you want your show to be. If you want this to be purely exhibiting your art, go with the gallery. If you want this to be about interacting, it might actually be beneficial to do it in the non-traditional space. Did I cover your question adequately? Please feel free to ask follow-up. All right. How else can I assist?
When it comes to arranging our art, all three of our themes are pretty different. I mean, they're not consistent. And so when it comes to arranging that within the space, I know you haven't actually seen the space itself, but do you have any pointers on that aspect?
Well, to be honest, there are two ways you can go about it, and I apologize, but that's part of the beauty of this, having options. One is you can each have a corner or a wall, however the space is arranged. You could do it as though they're almost three separate installations. So it's one person's work, another person's work, the third person's work, and then usually the fourth wall or the other segment would be an introductory wall with a large panel, usually with either all three of your artist's statements or an introduction to the exhibition as a whole with your artist statements accompanying your own work. That is one way of going about it. Pros, cons, both versions are going to have them. One pro of intermingling is the allowance that you can actually have your pieces interact with each other in a much more vibrant way. For example, if they play off of each other well. I don't just mean visually, because of course you can always balance blues and reds and grays, and you guys are artists, you know how to make the colors look good next to each other. You know this. I don't have to help you with that. But it can allow you to make a statement using each other's art. For example, if one of you has politically based art, I don't know, perhaps, you can put something politically based next to something far more traditional and have the politics of your piece amplified. And the serenity of the other piece also amplified. It allows you to play off of each other in a very dynamic way. Unfortunately, that does lead to a little bit of disambiguity, because you're going to have a slight problem where some visitors who don't necessarily pick up on the distinctions in style may forget that these two pieces are by different artists and potentially become confused. So in many ways, it is preferable to have corners or walls or sections. But you can also designate them in other ways. For example, if you, by chance, happen to use mostly framed pieces, each of you can have a different type of frame. You'll automatically link all of the pieces in brushed nickel frames. All brushed nickel frames will be by one of you. All red frames will be by another. Now, of course, I'm making that up. But the idea is you can distinguish them using some sort of other feature, including a colored wall text. You can have a caption to your piece, and I do not recommend they be long. Less than a third of the pieces in your show should have extended labels. Do you know what an extended label is? An extended label is something that goes beyond title, date, and author and medium. It's something that actually explains the piece with a 3 to 5 sentence paragraph, whether it's a thematic explanation, a stylistic explanation, or even a technical explanation. Less than a third of the pieces on your walls or on the floor or however you hang should have these. Most of your pieces should be short, self-explanatory. But either way, if all of you have each of you has a theme color, perhaps. So one of you has labels with a faintly gray background. One of you has labels with a faintly blue background. Do not go too far, or they will be unreadable. We've made that mistake. I've seen many museums make that mistake, and you can tell they really thought it would come out lighter. But if you each have your own color, or your own font even, although I highly recommend you avoid that, because clarity of font is something that should be universal, simply because there's a reason Times New Roman and Courier have become so popular. They're very clear and easy to read. But if you each have something about your particular text that sets you apart from each other, intermingling is no longer a problem. Whether consciously or unconsciously, any viewer will associate all of the pieces of the blue label or brushed nickel frame with one another. So you have multiple options. And again, it all depends on how you want your art to interact with each other. And also, I hate to say it, but it does depend on the layout of the room and how large your pieces are. If you have a piece that takes up a whole wall, you run out of a few options. You have to work around that. And also, if you have any pieces that rest on the floor or hang, you need to allow enough space not only for a person to pass between, but for a person to back up so that they can see the piece correctly without bumping into another piece. Also remember, a lot of people forget this, ADA compliance is very important. You can't just back up on foot, you have to make sure somebody on crutches, somebody in a wheelchair, somebody with vision impairment will be able to actually take a physical step back without bumping into something that's hanging off of the ceiling. Nobody wants a concussion and nobody wants their art ruined. So, all right. Again, any follow-up to that? All right, next question.
Any more questions?
That's covered a lot of what I had questions about. So
Let's go back into the screen here. So would it be all right if my students contact you for any future additional questions down the line, if you're able to respond to them?
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. Please give them my Gmail account.
Fantastic. I should do that.
And I will be happy to respond to any questions.
Great. Thank you. This at the moment it's still in the process of being developed, the bodies of work. So when things are more concrete, I'll have them throw you some more questions there. But for now, let's end the presentation here, and I want to thank you for your time. It's been a fantastic and very informative session. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to hearing from you regarding your projects.
Great. This is Northwestern State University Studio Department signing out. Thank you, Ms. Goldmacher. Have a good one.
Thank you.